Accrual basically means in the last 7 days, only the spend and the users and the clicks, only in the last 7 days that ad had is going to be counted. If they clicked last week and bought this week, we don't count. The first click accrual inside of Wicked is always higher and it's always lower in-app. The in-app first click and the external app first click, NCACs, compared to the other set of creative. If it's worse, then we know, okay, that one didn't work.
We're going to be getting into some really interesting strategies here, which are sort of older strategies, but now work just as well today.
But yeah, it kind of like takes things like Meta's trying to go deeper into one area. We found like an old tactic that still works. Cool. So I'll share the case study here. So here's the results. L1 was our main campaign. It was open targeting. We're only counting new customer purchases. It is a lot of continuity. So we do have a subscription model that is growing. We do have a lot of sales on Amazon. So those are all things that are taken into consideration rather than simply just in-app metrics, which is, the least accurate to how a business is actually performing. Mm-hmm. So just know that there's more than what we can share on screen here. Actually, I can pop into a continuity model just so I can share that when the time is right. Let's get that all prepared. So while I'm getting prepared on the other screen, I'll be explaining this screen here. The L1 was our main campaign. That was a campaign that's been running for a few months, scaled up. In this last 9 days here, as an example, there is like 28 grand on this campaign here. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to kind of share
website conversions, I'm sure.
Yep. Website conversions, open targeting, customers excluded, no lookalikes added, and all of the ads were in one ad set. Mm-hmm. So everything kind of just equal, fight it out to the death. Everyone sharing the same daily budget from a campaign. So this is a CBO campaign. So our thought process was, well, what if we need to do creative testing? So what we need to have a creative testing campaign. And the creative testing campaign, we called it L0 because it was like pre-L1 before it got to L2 and L3, etc. So in the L0 is where we did our creative testing. And that is in ABO. And the ABO, we have a new ad. You're going to see some things here I'll explain here in a moment. But we have each new ad that we want to produce is at 225 days or $225 a day in ABO. So ABO is simply just whenever we launch a new ad, we set a $225 per day. Again, same targeting as our L1, open targeting, customers excluded, etc. But what we found out is that if we look at the in platform CPAs, the cost per new customers, we're starting to see some ones that are actually like vastly outperforming our L1s. And at the time of when we first started seeing this is when we're actually at like 1/4 of the ad spend. So we're like, okay, well, economies of scale. Economy of scale is always going to be cheaper CPAs inside of creative testing. But once you jack this thing up to the size of an L1, then of course things are going to get worse because we're going to 5x the spend. So we said, well, what if that wasn't the case? What if our creative testing is actually outperforming our L1s? So we said, okay, if creative testing is outperforming existing best performing ads, how do we prove it at scale? Yeah. So and what we did is we tried to just increase the daily ad spend on an ad, and then it failed. We're like, yep, see, told you. Mm-hmm. As soon as it went into, a higher spend like the L1s are, it starts to perform worse. Right. There was an article though, and I forget who it was, but there was a person years ago who said they were cloning their campaigns, not in the structure with like creative testing, but they were cloning their ad groups for scale. So it was scaling it at breadth, spending $225 a day, clone it and spend 500 or $450. Right. And then clone it again and keep going it. So you're scaling by cloning.
That's a 2016 strategy right there.
Yeah. Right. And so we're like, let's go back in time and try that again. So what we ended up doing was I'll open this expansion here. We ended up taking out like $7,000 in spend. We reduced this one by 44%. We increased this one by 118%. But you can see that dropped 22 grand. That only increased by 12. Mm-hmm. So now they're spending about equal. But this one we're saving about $7,000 in ad spend. Then we look at what it actually had an effect on this. And this is on a similar date range. We're only like 2 days off from this view here, but this is the start and this is the last week's worth of result. I usually like to give last week's of results so that you can kind of see, okay, this is something that you thought was cool in 2022 and now you're regurgitating content. This is actually up until the 19th, which was yesterday. Right. And what you're seeing is that I'll do my little screen drawing tool thing. We see that this has been dropped 48% in cost, where you do get an economy of scale with cheaper NCAC. Usually when you spend less, you're not pushing, you do see a better performance.
Right.
And then on the other side, though, we're starting to scale this up.
That's your CBO campaign, right?
I'm sorry.
Open targeting.
Our L1 CBO open targeting, we're pulling back that ad spend. We dropped it by 48%.
Got it. CBO,
and
campaign budget optimization. If you don't know what that is, but most of the people on this
Yep.
call probably do. So go ahead.
Yep. So campaign budget optimization, this one is being reduced, and you're seeing an economy of scale get better with cheaper NCAC. Now, at the same time, we're reallocating that ad spend to our creative testing L0 ABO, which is the ad set controlled spend per day. And that's going up by 34%. But that's also seeing a cheaper NCAC. So our NCAC, these two are comparative. Now this one looks worse, this one looks better. However, they're both collectively dropping as we switch over. So that compounding effort here, which is taking out more spend than we're increasing, but also seeing an increase of the amount of total sales kind of going up at the same rate as going down. What that compounds to is 10% less spend, 20% more new sales, 18% more new customers, and our NCAC dropping by 11.4%. So for 10 or for $7,000 less, we got 20% more new customers at a cheaper NCAC. So okay, so how are we doing this? Well, we're taking our creative testing campaign, and when something does, when a new ad that we're testing does good, like Barber here, for example, that's getting $125 NCAC. Like, all right, well, let's clone that. So now we have a Barbara C1. And then after some time, this also worked its way down from a 250 down to a 155 NCAC. Or so basically purchase and see in-app NCAC. We'll call it that. So that one's starting to go. It was like, all right, well, let's clone it again. So now we're doing Barbara C2. That also worked its way down to a 141. We're like, excellent. Let's clone it 2 more times, a C3 and a C4. And that actually happened on the same date range here. So these two are now starting off at 340 and 250, and they will work themselves down to where the other Barber's at.
So nothing changed aside from you just duplicated the ad set.
We literally just hit duplicate.
That's all it is.
Yep. And now,
what's old is new again, ladies and gentlemen.
And we're duplicating these at $225 per day. So each time we duplicate it, it's an incremental 225 per day.
Yeah.
Or because I suck at math and I don't want to take off my socks to count over 10, let's do 225 times 30.
We don't want to see your feet either. So
I can only count to 10 with my hands. Count to 20, I need my socks off. So it's an extra, basically $6,700 per month in scale each time we clone it.
That's pretty significant.
Right. So 225 times 30. And if you do that, obviously if you take 1 and you make 5, well, 225 times 5 times 30, that's a $38,000 increase.
Yeah.
So that's what we're basically doing. That's a large scale to see in-app CPA and then also seeing the top line also hold. So we thought, okay, now how do we do this yet again? Well, we're like, let's take Joan. And we took Joan and cloned Joan. We started Joan and then we cloned Joan and then we cloned Joan. And what happens? Well, it sucks. It sucks and it still sucks. All right. Well, that's pretty definitive creative testing.
Right.
So we thought, okay, well, if Joan here, the C0, C1, and C2, again, you're kind of seeing nomenclature that's done on the fly. So it's not very organized, but we know what's going on. And we're like, okay, well, that collectively got a 321, a 384, and nothing for 390 yet. Well, dang, if you take the average of what Barbara was doing, which is about 210 to 190, the first 3 here, okay, this creative doesn't work. Well, what we're also looking at too is that our creative testing and our L1 ABO is much colder than our L1s. So 62% cold versus 49. So this actually
surprised it's that high, actually.
I know. We haven't seen 62 embedded in forever. But
I can't remember the last time. Yeah.
Right. But what's cool is because we're taking Joan and we're cloning it 3 times, it's like this is 3 chances. Like cold traffic, no. Cold traffic again, no. Cold traffic a 3rd time, no. Done. We know this sucks. But when we take Barbara and we said cold traffic, it worked. Cold traffic again, it worked. Cold traffic again, it worked. Cold traffic again, it's worked. Okay, great. Yeah. We are not going to stop cloning Barbara until Barbara C12 fails.
Okay, so a question for you here. You duplicated Barbara though. Before we move on, like, did you duplicate the 3 times all at once, or did you do it over a period of time? before
Over
we
a
move on
month.
to the next. Over a month. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Every
Got
week
it.
we're like, Barbara's still doing good. Clone her again.
Clone her again. So you look in there, you check everything, see the CPAs coming down.
Starts high after 7 days, gets better. Clone again. Start high after 7 days, comes down, and clone again.
I mean, you are using an in-app number here, though. You're using cost per results, but you're also double checking it with Wicked.
Yep. And so we go inside of here, and then we look at what is Barbara's NCAC here. Now, this we're using a really strict version of our measurement. Barbara is doing. Where's Barbara's C0?
Your screen's a little bit blurry, but
oh yeah, let me just find.
Oh, there you go.
Okay. So what we had to do is take like the highs, lows. What you're going to see here too is that we're using a first click accrual of the last 7 days. And so that is like literally the most, it's like a 7-day look back on first click. It's very, very, very strict.
Most stringent. Right.
Exactly.
So by accrual, tell everybody what you mean by that.
Accrual basically means in the last 7 days, only the ads that only the spend and the users and the clicks, only in the last 7 days that ad had is going to be counted. If they clicked last week and bought this week, we don't count them.
Yeah.
So
it's a harsh
really
measure. Yeah.
Harsh measure. Yep. And then this one is also doing purchase NC. So we have 2 points. The first click accrual inside of Wicked is always higher and it's always lower in-app. But you take the collectiveness. How are the in-app first click and the external app first click NCACs compared to the other set of creative? If it's worse, then we know, okay, that one didn't work.
Accrual meaning a methodology of accounting for people to, like, when you invoice, you don't necessarily collect the money, right?
Yeah,
when
it's
you get
almost
the click, you don't necessarily get the money. It's like your first engagement, but you're being very, you're assuming, all right, accrual, I am counting it as an accrual because as soon as I invoice, but I immediately get paid on that one click.
Exactly. So it's really, and with creative testing, I want to see how's that last week of that working. Like, yeah, don't count the person that, because it's only 60% cold, maybe interacted with Joan and then converted on Barbara. I don't care. How did the first click on Joan do? How the first click on Barbara do? So it's really like the most, if I was to push this and clone this, I can only count on that happening yet again and again and again and again.